All right, we're back. It is Comp 1001, Game 1014 Comp in the winter 2017 semester, and we are week 3 already, part 1 of our broadcast. I want to talk about a couple things today. A little bit of change of format. I spoke to Alex last week, and what we're going to do a little bit today is I'm going to give you 2 hours to work on your stuff together. I'll do an hour of stuff with you, so more of a how to program stuff, and what I'm expecting for next week. Because next week is your big, your first big presentation. Big presentation, quote unquote. Yeah, not that big. But anyway, so I've detailed some stuff up on Blackboard, which I'm going to go over with you today. And then we're going to talk about more about Create.js and that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you how to build a small, we're going to start building a game today. I'm going to build a game with you guys, right? I'm going to make a kind of a top-down shooter type game, very simple game. And I put some assets up on a link to the assets on Slack, which points to my GitHub repo up on GitHub / George Brown College, right? So we're going to talk about that today. I want to start by talking about, I'm going to go up on Blackboard, and there is an assignment 1 first playable area where you can upload your stuff. It's worth 10% for next week, right? And again, this is a team effort. It's due week 4, that's the day we get together, February 2nd, at the beginning of class. So please don't upload your documents at the end of class. It's due by the beginning, which means probably before class. At the latest, I want you to put everything together. What am I looking for? An updated version of your game design document, or whatever you call it, right? That game design document has to be updated because it's a living document. We're not going to stop using that thing throughout the entire semester, right? And that's a carryover from last semester, and the last 2 weeks have been together. So any changes you made, I know some teams have come together, some teams have split up and come together. All kinds of stuff have happened. People have gained members, lost members, all that kind of stuff. So please, those are things you need to detail in your document. And who's doing what? Again, the stuff we did last week. If anything's changed, kind of update that in your document. That's for next week.
Very minimal changes, though. Right?
Nothing really.
We took a new direction or something.
Exactly. For you, not a lot of changes. For some other people, there might be big changes, right? Because you've kind of taken on a whole new game concept. Seriously, some people have done that too, right? A link to your GitHub repo. So whoever your engineering lead is, or if whoever owns that GitHub link could be the leader of the team or whatever, call them production manager. We need a link to that repo so I can actually look at the code on GitHub. And actually, it's going to be used, not just that, but also I want to see your progress. Do you use GitHub for as you progress in your game, or do you just use it the bare minimum way? We want you to use it all the time. I want to keep track of your changes and your in your production. How do you use GitHub, right? So you should be doing that a lot. And then a zip archive of your project files. Please don't give me RAR files, because I'm going to actually run your game. At one point, I'm going to kind of take it apart. I want to dissect what you have, run your game, which means it should be runnable by me looking at it, downloading it, and putting it inside, either on a server or double-clicking on the index.html file, right? I should be able to run a playable version of your game. Now, when I say playable version of your game, I'm talking about it has to be a playable first level, okay? That means it doesn't have to have sound, okay? I'm not looking for sound or polish next week. It doesn't have to have a tutorial screen or anything like that. It doesn't have to have a menu of any kind, right? Your UI could be minimal. If you're going to display things like your life, like health, or score, points, score, whatever you want to call it, yes, you may want to put that in there. There should be collision detection, okay? That should be all ready to go by next week. If you can't do collision detection by next week, that's a bit of a problem. That means it's not really playable, because you're just moving your guy around the screen, and there's no interaction with enemies or obstacles or whatever, however your game is going to work, right? So that's kind of stuff. Again, it's one playable level, your minimum viable product, call it whatever you like. It's beyond the prototype stage at this point, where you've already done some prototyping. This is something that's your first build that's running, first runnable, like it says, or playable. And that's what's due next week. And that's what I'm going to test you on. If these things aren't there, example, if I don't see, like, there's no avatar doesn't move around the screen, there's no collisions, like you failed to build, there's lots of errors, that's where you're going to lose points on your 10%. It's a team effort, so everyone's going to get the same mark on that one, right? Presentation, that's a different part. And I put some details. I got to actually put a document on there, and it looks like this, all right? So you're going to kind of put together a slide deck I've asked you for your game design document again, some excerpts. So whatever it says in your game design document, it could be some things, some parts you put in your presentations, right? I don't need a direct copy paste. It's not like that. But things like, for example, hey, what's my game about? And you're going to have like, what's my game about slide, right? So we're going to talk about this, right? You must present live. Okay, so that means like whoever's going to be presenting, you choose the members who have to present. I recommend at least 3 people, 2 or 3 people to present. And the reason why is because you might have one person talking about the actual, document. Make sure it's you've practiced saying what you're going to say. Please don't try and ad lib because everyone will be able to see through that, right? That's not a good thing. I recommend the slide deck. It doesn't have to be PowerPoint, but it could be PowerPoint. It could be Keynote. It could be whatever slide deck you like to use, software. But some way to keep yourself organized and make it interesting for people to watch. Hey, if you're just up here talking about your game and then you do a quick demo, meh. I want to see some stuff. You want to talk about your game a little bit, right? Make sure that, and I kind of detailed the stuff that I need from you. I want you guys to have a team logo if you don't have one already, all right? So that doesn't take much to kind of construct. Does anyone not have a team logo that's physically here by now, right? If you don't, or if you've come together and there's 2 teams that have come together, put both the logos on there. So we had these 2 teams. Here's my team logo from team 1, my team logo from team 2, and we're working together to produce this game, right? And it should be, the name of your game maybe on the first slide, almost like an intro slide. Again, so I'm looking at marks like materials and your presentation value. So whoever you put up there, make sure they know what to say, they know the material, they're going to pitch the game out, right? An overview slide. What is your game about? That's like slide 2, right? Maybe a slide is some kind of like maybe a screenshot of the back, of your game, what it looks like on that slide would be a good idea. That might be a good thing to put up there. And other kind of things. And also talk about your inspiration. Where did you get inspiration to make this game? Did it come out of the blue? Is it brand new? Did you take it from something else that existed before? Is it a remake of another game? Or whatever? Put it up there. I want to understand where that comes from. The third slide would be your planning slide. That's where you can excerpt from your planning documents, your game design document. You might want to put some wireframes on there to describe your level, what it's going to look like, that kind of thing. Again, not a lot of details here at this point. You may want to do things like sketch out your code requirements, things that you planned on doing, those kind of things. I know I've had teams before where they've kind of put up their schedule. This is what we're doing. Here's what here's what we're progressing. Here's what our checkpoint is, that kind of thing. Tell me how you play your game now. Slide 4 is like, how do you play this thing? What is this? I mean, what's the mechanics? Is it like, is it a top-down? I mean, you talked about an overview, but talk about how you play the game. I don't want you to play it yet. I want to talk about, is your input mouse and keyboard? Is it a game controller? Like, for example, if you're using Game.js for your team, right? How are you playing this thing, right? And, if you were going to play this game, tell me in a kind of a 2-second thing, how is this game played? What's the goal of the game in general? It's kind of a repeat of your overview slide with a little bit more detail. And then your game progress. Where are you? Like what, from where you want to be, where are you? You should be at least playable, right? At a playable level. And how far have you progressed in your plan? Talk about planned versus actual. This is what we planned, but this is what we actually got done. It's okay if you didn't get everything done that day. That's what this is all about, right? To kind of communicate and be honest, transparent about where you guys are, all right? That's what this thing is about. You're not going to lose marks to say something like, well, we planned to do X, Y, and Z, but we only did X. You're not going to lose marks for that. As long as the game is playable, you're good to go, right? Finally, you're going to demo your game. So at the end of your slides, you're going to talk about your slides, a little bit of talk about your game, and then you're going to demo it. Please, again, put somebody to demo the game that knows and loves to play it, all right? If you put somebody who doesn't know how to play your game and continuously fails playing it, that's not great, right? Because it doesn't show well when you pitch your game. So, make sure the computer's set up. Someone who's going to be demonstrating it on a laptop, you're going to come up here, right? So you're going to project on this thing. So, be aware of that you're going to project the game, right? So we're going to see it. It's going to look different projected than it actually does physically on your laptop. Again, I'm just reiterating stuff you probably already know, but I'm just talking about it because we've never done that before. And I've kind of put up stuff like, what do you got? Demo what you got. So if you've got a start menu scene, even though it's not required for next week, demo it. Show me what you got. Even if you get extra, more than what I asked for, or what you're supposed to have. That's okay. Show what you got, right? If you've got an instruction scene, show it. If you've got a gameplay level or multiple gameplay levels, show that team. And if that screen. If you got a game over scene, show that too. Show your game as much as you can. The whole thing, from slide deck, like from the beginning to the end, 5 to 7 minutes. I don't want to waste anybody's time next week. Okay, we might have what, 6 teams in here, right? 6 teams times 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Let's say 10 tops with questions and comments from the class, right? And maybe I'm going to ask you some questions and stuff like that too. So 10, 60, it's an hour, right? And the rest of the time, I still want to go over next week to give you some time where you can do your own thing, where you can actually plan and use that week as a planning week, a work week, right? So I want to give you some time to work in class and all that kind of stuff, okay? Any questions about your presentation, first presentation number 1 next week, and or your assignment 1, which is just your first playable? You guys are clear? Anybody have any concerns, right?
I got an easy one first.
Yeah.
Okay, our lab 2 for last week.
Yes.
It doesn't say that we've uploaded that. But that's set for the whole group, or
One person has to, remember I asked for 2 people. 2 people should have uploaded that thing. Remember for last week. Every time I ask you to do something, next week too, right?
Okay, it's just not showing up on the in there, so I just want to make sure before too much time passes that you have it.
Everyone, don't worry. It's only worth 2% or whatever it is, right? I'll take care of it, right? I want to make sure that you guys are all clear. So next week, that's a great segue. I'll use what you just asked. Please make sure that 2 people submit everything the same, right? Again, it's just as a backup. It's a great way of making sure that I got everything for the team. Yes, I could create groups, but at times I find that that's also a negative. It kind of doesn't work well. So just please, 2 people submit, and then I'm good. And then I can go through it and go, oh yeah, these 2 people are the exact same. You've listed your partners, your team members, and then everyone's going to get the same mark. Okay? So that's really it for your instructions for your PowerPoint slide. Again, please, guys, I want to make this so that it makes sense, right? I've used the same presentation details in other groups and other teams. It's not the first time we've done this. It works okay. One thing I may do is I might get you to sign up for who's going to go first. So I might have a little sign-up sheet that you're going to go to, right? So look for that. If by the end of class I can do that, I'll try and put up one on some kind of Google Drive out there, right? And I'll put the link onto Slack. And then all you need to do is sign up for when you want to do your stuff. So I'll have some slots. And it'll just be in order. We won't have a time frame. So I won't say like, between 3 and 3:10, it's going to be your group or whatever it's going to be. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be like just an order, right? And then if hopefully, again, we're going to try and get you into that 10-minute group where you can do everything within 5 to 7 minutes, and then a few minutes of questions, and then on to the next team. Okay, so I want to try and just keep it into about 60 minutes if I can. All right, so that's the administration piece today. I'm going to go right into building our game today, right? So I've put up, like I said, if you look up on GitHub under George Brown College, so github.com/George Brown College, I have some assets. They're called MP assets, right? All it is audio, fonts, and sprite assets that you can download and use for this demo that I'm going to do for today, right? And by the way, I'm just going to put my hand up. Are you guys finding the JavaScript TypeScript demos useful in any way? Because if you're not, then we'll just do game production, right? I mean, I don't want to hold you guys up, but the reason why I'm showing you is because I'm going to show you techniques on how to make things go, right? And it'll be similar to what you probably saw last semester because you guys did web game programming last semester, right? But I'm just going to show you some things in a slightly different way, and hopefully that'll give you an insight on what you can do differently. Yes.
Are you going to be using TypeScript?
TypeScript again. I'll be doing all that. I mean, again, you don't have to. You can still do JavaScript if you want. And you know what? TypeScript is JavaScript with extra stuff, so it's not like you're going to lose anything. All right, so let's start off from last week. So last week, I can come back to that in a second. Last week we had a project we were working with, and I want to continue. I don't want to kind of start from scratch again. I got a project from last week that I'm working with. It's GAME1014 W2017 lesson 2. I'm going to continue from that one and build on it. And again, we're going to continue to build. It'll be I want to make it as rapid from an application development perspective as possible, right? So I'm just going to copy and duplicate this project, and it's going to be lesson 3. right? Now, again, I have my Bower stuff. Everything is here. My entire Great Chase library is here, so you can follow along. I'm going to do a couple things, though. So I'm going to bring up my terminal window, again, command prompt on Windows machines. And I'm going to move to that project folder. So I'm just going to go into there. And when I do a ls-al, if you're using a Mac or Linux machine to build your stuff, you're going to see that there's going to be a hidden .git folder. Again, even if you're using a Windows machine, there'll be a .git folder. You have to expose it. You need to delete this one, or else it's going to have all the commits to follow along from last week. I don't want that. I want to kind of make a brand new project that points to another repo. Yeah.
Could I just like reinitialize it and stuff?
No, it's just easier to do this, and you may get mixed results because you also have other things like, for example, the remote and other things that might be still there, right? So, but I like your thinking. It'd be nice if you just can do it by hand. But the easiest way and the most, kind of the sure way of doing it is I want to do rm, so remove minus rf if you're using a Mac or a Linux machine. I want to force remove my .git folder. That's gone. Now I'm going to git init again, right? Git add dot, git commit minus m, and I'm going to do initial commit. These are all the same commands we did last week. So I'm kind of showing you this stuff too. I'm going to do some things slightly differently this time than last week because I want to show you. Remember, I want to use this as a vehicle for a couple reasons. One, a little bit more JavaScript and TypeScript and Game. And two, I want to teach you how to use GitHub to the best of your ability, right? Which means you can use GitHub for project management. And I want to show you that part too. So I'm going to start doing that today as something new. Okay, so what do we do here? I've got my project, but I need to link it up with GitHub. I don't have a GitHub repository for today. I'm going to make one. So again, I have lesson 1, lesson 2. I'm going to do the same thing with lesson 3. So here's GAME1014, W2017, and then it's lesson 3. Again, please forgive me for the speed today because I'm on a clock. I want to make sure you guys have as much time to work together today as possible. All right, so I'm going to grab these last 2 lines here. Again, this is just adding my remote and pushing to my remote, to my master branch. And I'm just going to copy paste them into my terminal. Again, it works slightly differently on Windows machines, but at the same time, by now you should know how to push to Git in GitHub. All right, so I've got my my repository pushed, and if you want to, you can download it from here, and this is where I'm going to start today. It's my starting point. So GAME1014, W2017, lesson 3, and it's on github.com/George Brown College, if you want to follow along. All right, and again, if you look at Slack, on the Slack channel, I put up this this assets link for you guys, so you can download your assets. You'll have the same assets as I do to follow along with, right? So we can kind of make the most out of this session. Okay. So now I need to launch Visual Studio Code like I did last time. And what I want here is I want to kind of drag and drop my folder again, just like last time. I want to drag and drop this game or lesson 3 folder inside here so we can progress. And again, just to review what we did last week, I made this little button that said, click me, and we made a clickable button, right? I'm looking at my code here. Notice that there's a game.js file here, right? This is, again, last week's work, right? And if you guys remember correctly, I want to use TypeScript to get code hinting, right? I created a little bit of an iffy, an immediately invoked function expression, which I recommend, by the way, for you to use whether you're using Phaser or any other framework, right? Why? Because it encapsulates your JavaScript variables. It keeps it locked in so that things are easier. Okay, remember, I didn't get any code hinting last week because there was no TypeScript involved whatsoever, right? And then I added TypeScript, right? Yes?
I just have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you have like different script files for each state, then how do you encapsulate it so everything is like for one TypeScript?
Well, that's where classes come into play and namespaces with TypeScript, right? But what you could do, again, this iffy, you can assign. This is a good question. The question is, how do I encapsulate? How do I share information from one file to another if you're putting them all in an iffy, right? And the way to do that is to assign a variable. So for example, something like, let's say I was going to do something like var or let, that might be the way to go, let my game equal to this whole iffy, right? Now this is an object that is kind of, this whole iffy is the object. And what I can do at the bottom of the iffy is do something like a return, and I return any object I want outside of the iffy. Whatever I want, any kind of variable that I want outside of that closure will come out, and it'll be that game will have all those objects, right? I'm not going to do that here yet. Again, if you notice, I've got this create.js stuff. Now I thought we had a more recent version of this up online, and I think I did. Did I do this on the Windows side last week? You guys remember? I may have. Yeah. Because this looks like it's out of date, right? It's okay because I'll just put that stuff back in again, right? But let's just go back. So last week we have two functions here. We had, and actually added a third, right? I had this function for an update. I had my rotate, my hello label rotating. We're going to do a few things a little differently today, right? What I want to do is I want to set up my TypeScript, and I want to set up some classes for my player. I'm going to make a top-down shooter, and I'm going to use a little plane game, right, that I've kind of created in the past called Mail Pilot to do that. All right. Now this is kind of my hello world. I do it with, like I said, with every game system I ever make, or any game engine. I always make something that I'm familiar with, so I get familiarized with that engine. And I recommend it if you're using, if you learn something new like Unity or Unreal in the future, always make the same game in a bunch of platforms, because then you'll learn the user interface. You'll learn the nuances of the game engine, right? To me, that's a good practice to learn. So I don't need this hello label now. I don't need this hello label anymore. Or this function. So I'm going to kind of clear it out. I do need this start method to start with. So this isn't going to change. And there's nothing going to be inside my update function. So that's where it changes. Now, one thing I am missing is TypeScript in general. I don't have TypeScript. OK, remember how we set up TypeScript last time? For those people who forgot, what I'm going to do is I need a tsconfig.json file. That's a requirement for TypeScript. So I'm going to kind of put that in. So tsconfig.json. What this tells me, and I'm going to, is how I target my compiler, right? So for those people who are not technical, it's just a configuration file. And what I want to do is kind of talk about compiler options. Because remember, TypeScript is a cross-compiled language. Or I transpile from TypeScript into JavaScript. That's what's going to happen, right? So there's my compiler options. And in here, what I want to do is, again, I want to kind of target what my target is. So if I look down here, these are all the different compiler options for TypeScript, right? And what I want to kind of look at is my target at the beginning. So my target is the target of the level of JavaScript I'm targeting. Remember, the previous level is ECMAScript 5, which is what I recommend. If you do ECMAScript 6, some browsers will not be able to do ECMAScript 6, so I don't recommend. All right? Then you want the module system. What module system I'm using? I'm leaving it at CommonJS. That's fine. And then finally, source maps. I want source maps to be turned on so I can get good code hinting. This is the bare minimum build that I use for my TypeScript configuration. Okay, so tsconfig.json file. Next, I need to add in, like we did last time, remember the typings? Right? I need to add those typings in again for my create.js library. I got my library, easel, preload, sound, and tween. I need to get those typings back in. Remember how we did this last time? Who remembers? Maybe no one. How did I do it? What did I put in my npm to do my typings? Add types, right? So I want to do this. I want to be npm install @types and then / the name of the type, in this case easel.js, right? And then -- save. I want to do that, right? But here's a problem with this. If I put -- save right now, it's not going to save anything anywhere because I don't have a package.json file here. So before I do this, this is a nice idea, but I want to do an npm init. Even though it's not a node project, it's not about that. It's about creating a manifest for my game. I'm going to go npm init. npm init will bring up this little wizard, and I'm going to put it the name of my project. So GAME1014 in this case, W2017. It's got to be lowercase and less than 3. And then it's version 1. My description is mail pilot project. That's what I'm doing today. Index.js doesn't matter. My test command doesn't matter. My repository does, and my keywords are Typescript, right, and create.js. You can use some keywords, no keywords. That's up to you. Author is me. You can put your own name. People are all following along, and I'm going to press enter, 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 and I've created my package.json file. So to date, I've created 2 different files today: my tsconfig.json file and my package.json file, which keeps track of. This is like my manifest from all of my code. It's going to keep track of all my code dependencies for my project, and this way I can always load them back in after. So actually there's 2, right? There's bower.json, where we have all of my software dependencies, and my package.json, where I'm going to keep track of things like my TypeScript dependencies and my other coding dependencies. All right, let's go back in there. So now I'm going to clear, and let's say, again, npm install. npm stands for Node Package Manager. Install @types, and then / the name of my pipe, so it's easel.js. If I can find that, minus save. And if I press enter, and if I did it properly, it should go out and fetch the types for easel.js and install them and list them as dependencies inside of my package.json file right here. I want to do the rest, and this is just a repeat of what I did last week. So that's why I'm going a little quicker. I want to do the rest, so I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to go, and I'm going to do it in one line. So npm install, again, @types, and then / I want to go tween.js, even though I have it, and then @types, all in one line, @types, and then it's going to be sound.js, and then @types, and then preload.js, and then minus save. And this is going to grab all the other ones and install them too. So I can use npm or bower to install everything at once. I don't have to do it line by line. I can do it all in one shot. Okay, great. Now that I have all of this set up, I have code hinting for my files, hopefully, right? But the only way I'm going to get that is if I change my game.js file, this one right here, my game.js file, I got to change this, right, so that it is a TS file. Now, here's another change I'm going to make. I like being really organized when I make my game. So I already have a lib folder, and then I have this game folder hanging out here, right? This isn't really good. And why does anyone think this is not good? If I just have a game.js, would you plot, if it was you, how are you making your game? Are you organizing yourself any differently? You should. I'm going to create a folder structure that I recommend. And I'm going to start off with my core folder structure. So I'm going to right click here, new folder, that I'm going to create called core. This is where my core functionality is going to be. And I'm going to drag and drop my game.js inside of there. And that's a change, right? It's such a big change that I got to change my index.html. In fact, every JavaScript file that I include, I've got to include in here. So it can't be scripts game.js anymore. It's got to be scripts / core / game.js. That's the first change. And I'm going to kind of annotate this by saying, hey, guess what? Anything in here are my game scripts. These are my game scripts. Okay, so we got this part. We pointed to this. Now I got to change the ending of this. I got to rename this thing from game.js to game.ts, right? That's the next change I got to make. So now it's a TypeScript file, not a JavaScript file. We did all this last week too. It's just a review. Fantastic, but I got a problem. I can't transpile, and I want to be able to transpile from TypeScript to JavaScript. And the way we do that with your Visual Studio Code, that's why I'm using Visual Studio Code, is Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B on the Mac. So I'm going to use Command-Shift-B in this case. And it's going to say, hey, there's no task runner configured, and I need to configure my task runner. So when I click my Configure Task Runner, it's going to ask me for some options. I'm going to choose Watch Mode. I'm going to choose Watch Mode. And what Watch Mode does is it creates this little task runner right here. Okay, this task runner means that whenever I'm running my project, and as soon as I press Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B again, it's going to transpile from TypeScript and JavaScript, and then it's going to watch my JavaScript files, all my JavaScript files in my project, for any changes, or my TypeScript files, and then it'll transpile automatically for me, so I don't have to do this more than once. Now, I'm going to press Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B again. It's going to take my existing TypeScript files, which are here, and transpile them into JavaScript. Here's the transpiled version. Okay. I'm going to go back and make some changes, right? Here is the canvas object. Remember, we need a canvas object. Last week, I kind of specified that we need to make this of type HTML element to give me some good code hinting. The stage object I need, and it has to be here in the global space here inside my files, because I want to make this of type create.js.stage, capital S. Excellent. Hello label I no longer need. And I'm going to change my vars to lets because it's a much safer and better way of doing it with the modern way. I don't care about this let game stuff. I just did that as an example, so I'm going to get rid of this. All right, so I've saved my game a number of times, and now if I go back to my game.js file, you can see here that it's transpiled everything and ready to go. I'm going to make another folder. I'm going to put all my objects in that folder, all my game objects. My first game object I'm going to make is my plane, right? That's what I'm going to do. All right, so let's do that. So in my scripts folder, again, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to add a new folder in here, okay? And my folder that I'm going to add in is my objects folder. You can call it different things. All my objects, that's all my game objects are going to go in there, okay? Next, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to insert a new file, because I'm going to start splitting off my files already for my classes and objects, okay? And what am I going to make? My plane.ts file. That's my object. So here's my plane. You can also call it player. And in my plane.ts, right, what I want to do is create something called a module, right? You can also call it namespace. Those both are synonymous. So I'm going to call it module. And in my module, I want to name my module as, and this is important, it's got to be the same name that you're going to use all the time. My module is going to be called objects, right? In my module objects, right, I'm going to put a class. My class is going to be called plane with a capital P. Here's my plane class. In my plane class, I need a constructor, right? My constructor is currently going to be empty, right? So it's going to be the empty constructor. All right, now you're like, wait a minute. Whoa, what are you doing here? Well, again, module, I want you to think of a module in TypeScript as a kind of a namespace. It's like a namespace. And you can also use the namespace keyword too. In here, in my object, this is the name of the module, and this is the name of my class. If you know anything, does anyone not know object-oriented programming at all? And again, if you're not a programmer, it's okay.
We just
right?
started the class like 2 weeks ago.
Fantastic. So you'll kind of be all on board with me with what I'm doing, right? So you know about classes a little bit.
We're just covering that class.
Wonderful. So I'm in line. I mean, kind of like on the same boat or the same frame with you guys, okay? So my class is just a blueprint for objects that I'm going to create in the game, right? My constructor, think about my constructor as an initializer, a way of initializing variables and all that stuff that are part of my class. And that's what it is. Typically in other languages, in C# and C++, and in other languages, the class typically has the same name. The constructor has the same name as the class. So it might be called plane again, right? But think about this as a function that initializes. All right, so inside here, this is my constructor, right? And I haven't done anything else. What kind of properties does my plane have right now? We don't know. But I know one thing. I know that my plane is going to need a start method, okay? My start method is going to return void. This is where I'm going to do all my initialization, right? And underneath that, I'm also going to have an update method for my plane. I want you to see something for a second, right? Hold on, you're going to say, Tom, start method and update method, didn't you put that in your game class? So if I go back to core game, I have a start method, a start function, and an update function for my game, and I have a start method and an update method for my plane, right? And why would I do that? Because I'm creating a hierarchy. I'm creating a way that I'm going to use all my objects. It's going to be very similar to what you might see later on when you learn Unity. If you haven't, are you learning Unity yet?
Yeah.
So stuff you've learned in Unity, I'm kind of using the same names that you might see in Unity here to give you a sense of how I would do them if I did JavaScript, like, you know, from scratch. All right. So now notice I have a start function. Well, I want to call the start function as soon as my constructor is initialized. So I could use the word start, but I want to use the this keyword just to make sure that I know which function I'm starting. Okay. My update function is only going to trigger when it's called. My start function doesn't have to be public. It can be private. So I can put a private keyword in front of it. And my update method it has to be public. So I'm going to put a public keyword, and just to be explicit about what this is. Again, these words here, all they do is they give their access modifiers to kind of show JavaScript whether they should be available outside of this object. Okay, now for those people who are curious, what is TypeScript doing, right? First of all, let's take a look at the JS that's been emitted. This is what's been emitted right now. Notice that I have function objects, right? And this is the actual JS, because remember, I'm targeting ECMAScript 5, which is the previous version of JavaScript, to make it compatible. That's what's happening here. And so what's happened is it's created an IFI. There we go. There's your IFI again. Same kind of stuff we had last time, except it's returning to the IFI. It's calling itself objects, this objects module. That's how it does it. Okay, but there's one problem. I'm not exposing anything inside this module, so it can't be used anywhere. And the only way that I can use something that's inside of a module, because I want you to think about this as a closure, is to use the export keyword. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to plain, right? Here's my plain. And I'm going to export my, my class. I'm going to say export class. When I do that and save, now if I look at my TypeScript or my JavaScript, it looks like this, right? Take a look at that. It actually returns objects.plain is equal to plain, right? So now it's exposed. I can actually I can get a handle of the object's object, if you will, and use it somewhere else. All right, I want to be able to do something with this plane. So far, it has nothing, right? One of the things that I want my plane to have, right, is a bitmap, right? Because it's got to look like something. My plane has to have a bitmap. But imagine if I was to actually add it in as a property. That means I would have to do something like this, plain.image, right, to basically access that property. That makes no sense. Wouldn't it be grand? And this is going back. I might be a little bit ahead of you if you've just started to learn object-oriented programming. But bear with me because this will all make sense later on. Wouldn't it be grand if I could inherit the bitmap class and extend it so my plane has an is-a relationship with the bitmap? And what I mean by that is, instead of making my plane just a blueprint, I want to make my plane a bitmap. But it's going to be my bitmap. It's going to be a customized bitmap that I can use and I can extend. And the way we do that here in JavaScript or any other language is behind plain, I'm going to use the extends keyword. My extends keyword is going to extend a class, which is going to be of type createjs.bitmap. This is a beautiful thing, right? You can't normally do this in JavaScript, right? Actually, in the new JavaScript, you can. But if now, here's a problem. I have a constructor, right? And it's saying, well, you're missing something, Tom. I need to make a call to my superclass, and I need to pass in there all the details for my plane. I don't have that yet. But let's suppose I'm gonna get there. I need to make a super call. The super call is asking me for all the things I need. Remember, I did this last time with my bitmap. It's asking for the path, and this is going to be a path to my bitmap, and I haven't put my bitmaps in here yet. Remember? We will in a second because I'm going to download them from GitHub, right? All right, so I need a path to my bitmap. Probably where it's going to be is assets, right? Images. Yes.
Sorry, I'm not exactly clear what a bitmap is.
An image. I want you to think about it as a sprite or an image. It could be a JPEG file or PNG image. Okay, that's what it is. A bitmap, when I say bitmap, and I'm glad you asked that question, please stop me. Ask me if you don't know something, because it's a great time to do this, right? So, and there's no wrong answers or wrong questions. Bitmap is just an image that we're going to use for my plane. So it's going to be the image of my plane itself, okay?
That's what I thought. I didn't know.
Fantastic, and that's how it should be. All right, so now, again, I'm sitting inside. I want you to see this now. if I'm inside my objects folder and I want to have access to my assets folder, I got to go up one level from a pathing perspective, and then I would be inside my scripts folder, up another level, right? So I'm at the root of my project, and then down 2 levels. So it's going to be like this. This is how you would write it. Up 1, up 2, right? And then into my assets folder, into my images folder. I don't have that yet. And then something like plain.ping, right? So plain.ping. I don't have this image yet, but I will. Okay. So my superclass demands that I have this object. It's looking for some kind of object, an image that I'm going to present to with my plane itself, right? Okay, fantastic. I need to get those images because I can't live like this. I need to have some kind of assets, right? And it's going to be inside of my assets folder that I want to put things. Well, where do I have them? Up on GitHub for you guys. So please go to GitHub and get those if you're following along. They're right here, right? So if I go to George Brown College, and if you look down, there's an MP assets folder. And what I wanted, you can fork this if you want, if you haven't already done it. I'm going to download this whole folder. I'm going to click here and just click download zip. Now this is going to go, I'm going to put it inside my assets, my folder right now. So I'm going to go to desktop. And inside my desktop, I'm going to go to GAME1014. Inside my GAME1014, I'm going to put it here inside this folder here. So outside of every other folder. And expand it. So when I do that, you're going to see that over here, I have my assets. Okay, well, here's my assets. I'm going to drag or copy all these things inside my assets folder so I can include them. I don't need this folder anymore. So I have my assets right here. Audio, fonts, and sprites. I've given you everything. I've given you audio files. So when you make collisions, I've given you background files for the ocean that we're going to see. I've given you my plane, my enemies, and stuff that I'm going to pick up. All those assets are here for you guys to use. Again, this is just for us for our coding, learning, and learning, right? The good thing is once I've dragged it in here on the operating system, they appear inside of my Visual Studio Code. Notice that they're here now. So if I go to assets, now it's called sprites. I want to rename these things to images because that's what they're going to be. So I'm going to rename them. Images. I'm going to make this lowercase. Same thing with my fonts. Rename them. Fonts, lowercase. And my audio, lowercase. I'm doing it lowercase because I want to maintain my coding style. So assets, images, plain is assets, images, plain. And if you look at the plain in Visual Studio Code, you'll see what it looks like. It looks like this little plane here. Now, if you haven't seen this plane before, it comes from 1942. If you ever play that game, it's an old game that used to be out in the thing. It's an old game, 1942. I'm kind of using this asset, right? It's not my game. And I'm going to use this plane as my main asset, okay? Let's go back to my game.ts now. So now that I've defined my plane, here's my plane, I want to make that plane appear inside of my game, right? I can't do that unless I make a reference to my module, right? This is where TypeScript kind of bridges the gap from TypeScript to JavaScript, right? So in my game.ts file, at the top, I've got to create a bunch of paths. And one of the paths I need, and it starts like this, by the way, you need to use a //, right? And then start typing reference path equals to the path where my module lives, okay? So it's going to be, notice where I am right now. I'm in core. I got to go up one, and then down into objects, and then it's got to be my plane, right? .ts. And then I have to end it off with this demarcation. If it doesn't work, it's going to give you an error. It's going to say, whoa, Tom, something's wrong. Why would this be wrong? Because I have two TS's. I spelled it wrong. But if I take it away, you can see that TypeScript tells you that that's the correct path now. Step one. Step two, to link a module to my game, I have to include it where? A link where? Physically. In my index.html. If it's not included in my index.html, it's never going to link to my modules because it's never included in my main manifest. So let's do that. So here's my index.html. And down in here, I need to include it. Now, question for those engineers out there, right? Should I include it before or after my game.js, or does it matter? Anybody have an idea? James, what do you think? Should I link it before or after my game.js if you're watching? So I'm putting two modules. Don't worry about looking now. Just think about this. I have my module. I made a plain class. Should I put my plain class before or after my game.js, my main game? It's actually, it doesn't matter, but it's really before by things. Thank you for guessing. How do I do that? It's got to look like this. So script, source, and it's equal to ./scripts. And then instead of going to core, I'm going to go to objects, and then it's going to go to plain, and it can't be TS because index.html does not read TypeScript files. It only reads JavaScript files. It's got to be plain.js. And I end up at tag. Okay, good. So there's my first object, right? My first object is the plain, and then I got my game. All right, now that I've saved everything, I need to include a reference to my plain, right, inside of my game somehow, right? How do I do that? Well, it depends on what I want to do. And here's where I'm going to go with this, right, so you guys understand it. If I'm going to make any updates, if I'm going to move my plain around, I need to specify I have to call the update for the plain in my update function. And if I'm going to do that, that means this has to be at the global space, so I've declared it there. So how am I going to do that? So these are kind of like game-specific, I'll say, variables, right? But I'm going to declare all my objects down here. So these are all my game object variables down here. So game object, variables. And underneath that, I'm going to make another let statement where let is called my plain, right? Which is of type, what type is it? Objects, right? I should be able to do objects now dot plain. Notice how it picks it up, right? That's the type. My plain is of type objects dot plain because I've put it inside the objects module, inside the objects folder, and now I've created a link to that. Now this is just a reference. It's not an actual object. I need to declare my object somewhere else. I'm probably going to do that inside of my start method, right? So notice that I have my start method right here, right? I could create a link to this. Or I could also do it inside of my game function. This is my game function. Either one is correct in this case for now. So here I'm going to do the following. First of all, I'm going to say console log. I want to see if I can get there, game started. Okay, the next one I want to put in is a reference to my plain. So I'm going to say plain dot, is equal to a new objects dot plain, and it's going to demand that I just do this because I've already, by default, inside my plain class, I've already specified the asset that it's going to look for from the image for my plain. I don't have to do it in here. I just have to kind of call my plain object. Yes?
When you call the plain .ts, the super, it's referring to the super constructor, right?
Which is create.js.bitmap. That's what I'm saying. And bitmap's looking for a URL. Thank you very much for that. A URL for my game. Sorry, not a URL, but actually a path to my image for the plane. Okay, that's what it's looking for. All right, so let's get back. So I'm going to go back to this, my game.ts. Okay, so there's my plane. It's not part of my stage yet because I need to add it to my stage. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say stage.addChild, and then we're going to put the plane in there. Okay, so my plane has been added to my stage. Yay. And if I want to move it later on, I want to do something like this inside my update function, plain.update. Notice that my update has a capital U, not a lowercase u, because that's how I programmed it in the game class. Okay, cool. We have a way of checking this out now, right? And I'm going to check this out for the first time. I'm going to use light-server to check it. I could probably double-click and make it work, but I'm not going to do that. And how do I do that? I'm going to go back to my folder and go light-server. And if everything goes well, on the top left corner of my screen, I'm going to have a little plane. Don't worry if I went too fast. Remember, I only have an hour to do this for you guys, so you have time to get together with your groups. You have the video. You can always go back and see what I've done with the video. to see what I've, to kind of set this all up. Okay, my plane is useless, right? There's a couple of reasons why it's useless. One, it's starting at the top left corner of my screen. And two, I can't move it around. And I want you guys to be able to move your stuff around next week, right? So how do I do that? I want to look at the mouse, the actual mouse itself, right? And wherever my mouse moves, I want my plane to move. But I want to lock it at the bottom portion of my screen. So the Y component from my plane is always going to be at the bottom of my screen. And the X component is going to map to where my mouse is going, left or right. Okay, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to fix that. And then once I'm finished my plane, we're going to stop for today. And then next time I'll add in the other things, my ocean and my clouds and my enemies, and we have everything set up. Let me finish my plane class. So back to my plane class. Here it is. What I want to do here is I want to set up some other things. Like, for example, in my start method, which is right here, I want to set up a location for my plane to start, right? So I want to say that the Y location. Now, question for you engineers out there. How do I reference my plane in this context? I want to reference the properties of the plane that have been inherited from the bitmap. How do I reference it?
You have to reference the
Sorry?
You have to reference the object.
The object itself. How do I reference the, very good. How do I reference the object itself? What keyword do I use? Take a guess. This, right? If you've never done the this keyword, this refers to the context of the object itself. So I'm going to do something like this. This.x, which means the plane's x position, right, is equal to, it's going to be a type mouse, right? So I don't know what that is yet, but Y is definitely going to be something like 430 pixels. And where did I get that number? I've done this thing over and over again. This is my hello world. I've made this game 20 times, right? So you're going to do it with me. So this is the plane's Y, or vertical position. And it's going to be fixed. Vertical position. All right, if I do that and I save everything, if I go back to the screen, you can see that it's down here. Uh-oh, how come my plane is below my horizon like this, right? Here's my 640 by 480, but my plane sits there. Do I want my plane to be there? No, but why is it showing out that way? Because the pivot of my bitmap right now is at the top left corner of my plane. So the top left corner of my plane is where it's starting to drop, right? I don't want that. I want my bitmap of this object to be, my pivot to be in the middle, which means I'm going to change my registration values, regx and resy, just like I did last time, to be in the middle. How do I do that? It's going to happen in my start method. So in my start method, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say this.regx, so I get good code hinting now because of Typescript, right, is going to be equal to this.getBounds. That's a new function that measures the boundary of my sprite, right? GetBounds dot width, right, times 0.5, right? And this dot resy, the registration, the Y value is equal to this dot getBounds dot height, right? And that's going to be multiplied by 0.5 again, because it's more efficient to multiply than to divide, right? Okay, that's great. And that's the registration values, right? So regx and resy are going to be half the height and width of the plane, right? And now if I check back, if I save and I go back, you can see that now it's moved over here, right? Now, why is it here? Because I haven't set an x coordinate yet, but it is above my horizon, which is good, above the lower part of my plane. And I want to be able to, when I move my mouse here, I want it to detect mouse movement and move along with me. The best place to do that is in the update function, right? So in my update, I want to do something like this, right? This.x is equal, and I want to kind of access my mouse. And if you notice, there is a mouse event I could tap into, right? But I also keep track of my mouse on my stage, right? So here's my global stage object. Now, I don't have access to my global stage object. Why not? Because of the IFI. The IFI's been, I don't have access to my stage object, right? So there's a couple things I can do here. I could pass a reference to my stage object into the update method of my plane. which I recommend because that's the only time I'm going to need access to my stage, okay, for now. We will change this later, right? This is just a stopgap measure for now, all right? Because I don't have access to stage, right? It's encapsulated here in my game. So what that means is I'm going to pass a reference to stage in here in my plane. I'm going to say this dot, or so I'll just use stage in this case. Okay, it gives me another line because my plane right now isn't configured to take a stage object, so I'm going to make that happen. So my plane.ts, inside my stage, my update function, I'm going to call for, right, a type of createjs.stage object that I'm looking for. And here's the problem, right? Notice how I'm not getting code hinting. Don't worry about that. I'm not getting code hinting because I got an error. It won't give me code hinting sometimes if I don't have if I have an error in my code. So now what I'm doing is, and that's the type, I want stage, local stage, to be of type createjs.stage. This is it right here. And this .x is equal to my stage.mousex. Okay? So stage is a reference, this local stage is a reference to createjs.stage. I'm passing in the stage object from my game, which is right here, right? Inside my update, I'm passing in a reference to my stage in here. And so I can refer to it inside my plane object. If I save this now and I go back, I should have some movement or I should have an error. Let's see what the error, I got an error for sure because my plane doesn't appear. Let's take a look at what my error says before we stop for the day. All right, lots of stuff. And you might see this a lot. It's like continuously trying to reference my game. Oh my God, I can't access my stuff. Why is this a problem? How come this is happening? How come I'm getting this mouse X of undefined? I don't have a reference to my stage object. How come? Well, the reason why is this happens all on my game side asynchronously. So I'm trying to send a reference to my stage object into my my plane when stage has never been defined at this point, because update could be called anytime, right? And there is no stage update, a stage reference at this point. It only happens when I define my stage in here, right? This is a problem. Stage is defined here, even though I've referenced it up here. Right now it's empty, right? And that's why I'm getting an empty reference down here. How do I fix it? The easiest way is here at this stage, at this point in time, stage has been defined by the time I come down here, right? So yes, it was a nice idea to put it here. That's why I told you I was going to change it. But in this update function, stage doesn't exist, right? So take it out and make, when I declare my plane, one of the constructor requirements is a reference to my stage. Now I'm going to change that in my plane. So in my plane, I'll just move this part out of here and put it up here, right? Now, this is not fixed because I need to have a reference to stage that I kind of create. So I'm going to say something like this: stage, local stage, right, is of type createjs.stage. Bear with me. I know this is a little bit confusing, it could be, but for most of you, it shouldn't be if you follow me. And then inside my constructor or inside my start somewhere, like up here, before I initialize my plane, I want to do something like this dot stage. Actually, I probably need to do it in my constructor because there's no reference here. I'll just do it here. I'll say this dot stage is equal to stage. So stage, local variable, this dot stage is this variable, and now I refer to this dot stage down here as the stage that is part of my object. Now, if I go back and if I don't have any errors, and I should be able to move my plane around, no problem. So I've got access to my plane. Now, here's another problem I got. It goes outside of the field of view. And how do I limit that? I need kind of to clamp. I need to be able to clamp my motion, so I can't move my plane outside of my view, right? Because I can move my plane anywhere I want now. When my mouse moves off stage, my plane will continue to move off stage too, right? And that's not what I want, right? I want to limit it so the plane stops here. And I want to limit this when my plane stops here. So how do I do that? Anyone have an idea? The plane.update, I'm going to do what? I'm going to check to see what my X position is. And if it's greater than, if it has to be less than half the width of my plane going to the right and it's got to be greater than half the width of my plane going to the left, right? That's what it has to be. So I'm going to make another method, a little function, a private method called checkbounds, right? That I'm going to reference down here. Let's do that. So here, between start and update, I'm going to make another method. My method is going to be private, and it's going to be checkbounds. Now, usually when I make private methods, I use an underscore. That's up to you when I define them. My checkbound methods is going to return void. And the only thing this thing is going to do is check where my plane's position is. Now, this is going to be an if statement, right? So I'm going to say if this.x is greater than the width, half the width of my plane. And if I go there and I realize that I need to get this half the width of my plane, and I've already done it right here, that means I can reuse half the width of my plane again, which means it might be a good idea to set up a class variable where it refers to that half the width.
Why half the width?
Because the width of the plane, thank you for that, the width of my plane, if I go to the width of my plane, I want to say, so look at where my mouse sits. My mouse sits in the dead center of my plane, right? When it goes to the edge, right, I want it to push me to the right, to the left a little bit. So I'm looking to see that, what's the extreme right of my stage? You know, it's 640 by 480, so my extreme right is 640 pixels. So I want to do this. I'm going to say it can't go beyond 640 pixels minus half the width, because half the width will push me to here, right? Because this is the full width would push me outside of that, right? So I gotta go here.
Point is the center point.
Right. So I gotta say 640 minus half the width of my plane. I don't know half the width of my plane, and there's two ways I can get it. For now, because I'm running out of time, I'm not gonna make my own variables. I'm just gonna copy this line over here, because there's issues with making your own variables like that. And I'm gonna put it like this. I'm gonna say is less than, if it's greater than 640, right? 640 pixels, which is hard coded again, plus, and in brackets, I'm going to put in half the width of my plane, right? This dot get bounds dot width, right? Kind of thing. If it's greater than this whole thing, 640 plus half the width of my plane. And why is this giving me an error here? So I got 1 bracket, 2 brackets, 3 brackets, 4 brackets, and I got 1 brackets, 2 brackets, 3 brackets, right? And usually that's what the problem is, but let's take a look. So it's greater than, oh yeah, this is bad too. Okay, so there it is. So this is the statement, right? So if x is, again, greater than 640 minus half the width of my plane, not plus, then what am I going to do, right? I want to make it so that this dot x is equal to 640 plus the width of my plane, right? Or minus the width of my plane, which is right here. Okay, so it's going to clamp on the greater than side. This clamps the right, clamp the right side. And then I want to do the same thing for the left side. All right, so clamp the left side. And how do I check that? Because it can be either one or the other. I'm going to copy this statement here and put it in here. And I'm going to check if it's less than half the width of my plane, right? So it's going to be get bounds half the width of my plane. I'm going to make that calculation again. That's why I'm telling you it's better to put it inside kind of some kind of variable, right? And for now, it'll have to suffice like this. I'm making that calculation again because there's a reason for it, not because I want to. Okay, so I'm checking to see half the width. Now, if I save everything, and if I did everything correctly, now, oh, what happened? How come it's not checking? How come that doesn't work? Right? So I'm checking. Here's my check bounds. Well, I got to call it, right here. So I got to say something like this. This dot underscore check bounds, right? I save again and refresh. Now, if you notice, it doesn't let me go past this point and past this point. So my plane must stay on my stage all the time. Okay, that's really it in a nutshell, everyone. I'm going to put this up on GitHub. I've added my plane feature, my plane asset. My next thing, if I had more time with you, is to add my island, my ocean, my movement, my collisions. All that kind of stuff is the things I'm missing from my game right now. But this is enough for today. So things I've talked about today are modules and how to add them in, how to make multiple modules and split your JavaScript files over multiple files, which is really, really important. Classes, right? And let me just take a look at the JavaScript emission. This is what it actually emits in JavaScript. Take a look at this mess. This is the JavaScript side that you'd have to code by hand, right? So to me, this is why TypeScript is better. It helps me make JavaScript that's compatible across any browser, right? And that's why I use it. Let me save this to GitHub. Now I have all these 43 changes. These are all the things I've added. I've added assets. I've added my plane. I've added all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to kind of go up to the top. And I'm using my integrated Git tool, which is part of Visual Studio Code. And I'm adding everything to the stage. And then I'm going to say something like this. Added plain object and related assets, which is what I did. I do this, and I'm going to go click my ellipses. And because I already configured my remote, I can just do a push, and it'll push everything up to GitHub. Okay? So now if you look at GitHub, so here's my GitHub. And if I refresh, you can see that I have it's fantastic when I do that, eh? This is the wrong repo. It's got to be here. When I look at GitHub, I should have 2 commits and a bunch of assets, right? That's what I was going to show you. Right? There's my commits, and this is my assets. So here's what I need to do. I need to add in stuff that I'm missing right now. What am I missing? I'm missing my background, my ocean, right? Take a look at issues here for a second. Here's my issues. This is the last part that I'm going to show you. Now, this is a GitHub thing for you, right? I can add a new issue on GitHub. This is new, right? If I add a new issue, I can define the issue. Issue for me is like a task I need to do or something to fix, right? Well, I can put something like, you know, I need to add the ocean background. And it's got to be scrollable. This is my requirement. Scrollable ocean background, almost like continuously scrollable. And I can also make it so that my issue, right? So once I've submitted my issue, you can see it issues. This is the issue that I need, right? I can also tie them to milestones, right? So I'm going to create a milestone that I'm going to call playable version, first playable version. Okay, here's my first playable version, right? Right now it's 0% complete, right? I can add issues or relate my issues to my first playable version, right? So I can kind of click on this issue again, and I can target my milestone. So it says no milestone. I can target my milestone, which is my first playable version, right? And I can add labels. Under labels, right now I have a bunch of them. I get enhancement and all this other stuff. And if I want to really look at labels, I can go to milestones again. And if you look at labels, I can make my own. One of my labels I can make is feature, right? And I'll make that label. And what I can do is in my issues, right, I can click on this issue now, and I can also assign a label, right? So here's my label. So I can assign feature as my label. This is a new feature that I want to add in, right? And notice if I go back to issues now, I have a label, a feature that I want to add in called need to add ocean background scrollable, right? Let's add some more. So I'm going to add in some other stuff. Like my other feature, my other issue would be I need to add cloud for enemies. I need to add that. And it's also going to be a new feature. It's also going to be part of my first playable version, right? And here's my label, which is a feature. Submit. And I'm going to do the same thing with all the other ones. And notice I have 2 features. If I click milestones, I have 0% complete, and there's 2 open tasks that I have to complete for myself, right, to make my first playable version. Now, I'm not going to go through all the list of features, but I would be adding inside issues. What I can do is I can list everything that I want to do to make my first playable version. These are all my tasks. And then I can assign them to people. Example, you know, if Corey and I, where's Corey? If Corey and I were working on this game together, because let's say he's my co-engineer, right? Then I can assign some of those things to Corey to get him to do it, right? And then once he's completed it, now my milestone will show this % complete based on the number of tasks that I've completed. All right? So it's a great way of doing stuff. And I'm going to do this next week when we get together. I'm going to use my milestones I'm not going to create a new project. I'm still going to stay with lesson 3, and I'm update my milestones from this project today. Okay. Questions around what we did today? Lots of stuff we covered. I know I went fast, and I apologize. But remember what I need to do. I need to talk about some tech stuff with you guys, and then give you some time to work in class. You can have the remainder of class to work within your teams, right? If you guys don't know how to do your modules or anything like that, remember the code. A lot of the documentation for all this is up on typescriptlang.org. Okay, so that's where all the documentation for TypeScript is. And always take a look. Now you have my code up on GitHub, right? Take a look at the code and see what is emitted from JavaScript, and you can see how ugly it is, right? Now this is good because if you're using Phaser, there is a TypeScript library for Phaser, which allows you to get good code hinting and all that kind of stuff if you're using Phaser. If you're doing things by vanilla JavaScript, right? Vanilla JavaScript, and you don't want to use any kind of other feature set. You don't want to use a module like or some kind of framework API, sorry, like CreateJS. You want to just do vanilla the whole time. You can still use TypeScript because of this modularization thing. Because you can use TypeScript to create classes and objects for your game and split off across different files to make it easier for you to work within teams. Okay? That's it for me, guys. And I'm going to go around and I'm going to do a little bit of a checkpoint today with you guys and see how you guys are doing. But we'll have more of this next week. Okay?